those of you who eat gluten or return to gluten. We are, gosh, coming up to the end of Makot really fast. It's a short tractate, so we will see you very soon for a siyum. But in the meantime, let us just take a gander back at some things that we saw in the daf in the last 7 days. So for those of you just joining, I'm Rachel Scheinerman. I edit My Jewish Learning and Daily Dose of Talmud, and we have a wonderful rotation of teachers to teach this class. And this day, we are joined by Rabbi Elliot Goldberg. So,
Hi,
Rabbi,
everybody.
started.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everybody. I wish you all a good morning because it's morning where I am. I know we're all over the globe. So wish yourself a good, whatever time of day it is for you. And we're going to get started. What we're going to focus on today is one of the main themes of chapter 2 of Masechet Makot, which is about the cities of refuge. The Torah says that the Israelites should, when they settle in the land of Israel, should set up 6 cities of refuge. Those are meant to be places where a person who inadvertently or unintentionally causes the death of someone else, kills someone else, but not with intent, is expected to flee to protect themselves from a revenge killing. The verses in the Torah seem to be aware. There's sort of makes me think about like the Wild West movies I used to watch with my dad when I was a kid, many of which were about feuds between different clans which started often with some fight or something, and like one clan someone gets killed from one clan or another, and the other clan has to rise up to avenge the death. The Torah seems to be aware of this phenomenon as well before Hollywood picked that up as a theme. And there's a way in which, to me, sometimes surprisingly, instead of the Torah saying, if someone is inadvertently killed, do not rise up and go kill the person who killed your family member or friend, because that sort of killing is bad. Don't do it. The Torah sort of has some sensitivity to the victim's family and their emotional state, and seems to recognize that they might not be in their best place and act irrationally, and we might not be able to stop them from avenging the death of their relative. So the Torah's fix is not to ban revenge killings, but to create a safe space for people who might be the target of revenge killings to go, and there they can live. They could live out their days with safety and protection. Although the stipulation in the Torah is you don't live out your days, you live out the days of the current Kohen Gadol, the current high priest. When the high priest dies and is replaced by a new one, people in the city go free. And the assumption is that those who might have been out for revenge have calmed down by that time, and they are safe to be there. We learn in the Gemara, in the second parak, that as someone is being escorted to the city of refuge, they're accompanied by a teacher and 2 students. Why? Right? It's sort of their escort, right? They're not escorted by U.S. Marshals, or I guess ancient Israelite marshals, right? There's not a small guard, right? The guards that they have are 1 teacher and 2 students. And the Gemara tells us the reason for that is, should the person who's out for revenge be chasing down this person who's going to the city of refuge, and trying to, I guess the motivation is, the person who killed my relative is heading to the city of refuge. If I catch him on the road before he gets there, I can kill him and get my revenge. So the escort that's sent is a teacher and 2 students, and they're there. That should a potential revenge killer appear on the road, the idea is that the teacher of Torah and the students could talk the person down off their moment, and provide protection for the person they're escorting, right? Not a protective escort in the way we think of it with shields, shields and weapons and armor and weapons to protect them from the potential killer who's out to get him, but instead with words and with Torah to say, you don't want to do this. I mean, from this moment of thinking about the escorts, the rabbis make an interesting flip, which are the texts we're going to look at today. They start to imagine, this is how I have it. It doesn't say this in the text, but given the flow of the Gemara, this is how I read it. Having put themselves in the place of thinking about the escort of the person going to the city of refuge is accompanied by a teacher of Torah and 2 students, it leads them to think, oh, what if one of us from our community of teachers and students inadvertently kills somebody and has to go to the city of refuge? What would that look like? And that's where we get the texts that we're going to look at now. And I'm sharing the link in the chat to the slides I'm going to share. You can look at it now or later, but I'm gonna share my screen, so it'll be up on the screen for me. Here we go. And of course, there's a whole bunch of you who beat me to my own slides. Excellent. All right, here we go. Let me just give me a second. The Zoom windows always pop up in different places over my slides and right in front of the text. There we go. I can see you and the text. So at the beginning of the week, we encountered this text where the sages taught in a Braita, an early rabbinic text, when a student was exiled, his teacher is exiled with him. So if a student of Torah is sent, right, inadvertently kills somebody and is sent to a city of refuge, this Braita says, not only is the student exiled, but his teacher has to go with him. There's a proof text for this, as it is stated, and he shall flee to one of these cities and live. He, right, the inadvertent killer, shall flee to one of these cities, one of the 6 cities of refuge, and live. I've highlighted, put and live in italics, not because it's in italics in the Torah, but because that's the key words there. When you flee to one of those cities and live, and the Gemara, the Midrash here tells us in the Gemara, right, from here, it is derived from this word and live, perform some actions for the unintentional murderer so that life in the city will be conducive to living for him. In other words, we've set up these cities for people to exile themselves to protect their lives. Those should be places that are nice places to live, right? Just before, a little earlier on the page, right, we read a Braita that lists some of those things, right? It shouldn't be, the city of refuge shouldn't be the biggest metropolis, but it shouldn't be like, Podunk, it shouldn't be Nowheresville. And it should be a place that has, water available. Like there should be a stream where you should dig wells. It should have a decent population. There should be certain amenities in the cities that are all listed, the Gemara lists of what should be there. And one of those things, if a person who's a student of Torah goes, they should be able to study Torah while they're in one of those cities. And so this Braita declares, in order to make that happen, when a student is exiled to a city of refuge, his teacher goes with them. I guess the assumption is the city of refuge doesn't have a Beit Midrash of its own already. The student has to provide their own teacher to go. But it's interesting to me that they think about this, right? That an unintentional murderer who's going to a city of refuge should not be left without the Torah that they were studying. And to make that happen, that their teacher has to go with them so that they can still study Torah. That's the level of commitment I guess the rabbis built into the system of the cities of refuge to Torah study. Unfortunate for the student who has to exile themselves because they're in a tough place. They have to upend their life because of an accidental death that's caused by them. But yet their teacher also has the same fate and has to go. Rabbi Zera notes in response to this teaching, from here one learns that a person should not teach a student who is not fit. It's an interesting teaching and connection here. On one level, it means, because you might have to go to the city of refuge if one of your students is exiled, as you select your students, choose well so you don't choose a student who might end up in this situation. Although the implication of Rabbi Zera's statement, it's a little difficult for me because it seems to say you can predict who's going to be an inadvertent killer and who's not, which sort of goes against, the notion of what the cities of refuge are for, right? Sort of something happens inadvertently, accidentally. You're the somehow the victim of circumstance. You engage in some sort of action, and it leads to someone's death. The notion is you're innocent of that death, and you're not culpable legally. If you were culpable legally, you would stand trial and not go to the city of refuge. And in some ways, the spirit of the law is this could happen to anybody, and we want to protect you from revenge feelings, so you have to go. But Ravi Zera's teaching here, at least in this context, seems to apply that, if you're taking on students, you got to be careful you choose, because you can select away from someone who might be inadvertently exiled to a city of refuge, and then you don't have to go with them. But somehow it strikes me that's not, unless, I can think of, I don't know. I had students who had trouble sitting still and maybe were more accident prone. And so maybe there's a way to select against them. But it seems to me, while Rabbi Zera's heart might be in the right place, pick your students carefully so you don't have to go to a city of refuge. He seems to not fully get, who the population are that are at risk of being exiled to city refuge, and the fact that we might not be able to identify them.
Rabbi Goldberg, we have a bunch of questions in the chat. Is this a good moment to pause and address some of them, or do you want to share a little?
This is a fine moment, because we're going to switch to another scenario. But yes, this is a fine moment.
All right. If I may summarize what's going on here, I think lots of people are having the very natural emotional reaction of, well, what about this is disruptive now to more than one family, right? You've got these, do these teachers have to come into exile? Are they stuck in that city now? What about their families? Can they come and go? Can they decline going? Can they say, no, I prefer to live where I was living already? It's very unclear from this teaching. I think what is required versus what is recommended, and what that actually looks like on the ground.
Yes. So I'm glad we introduced those there, and thanks for cluing me in. I guess I'm the only one. Everyone else is following the text. So now I know what you're thinking. Thanks for, let me come back to that in a minute, because these questions are all going to apply even more to the next text. If you have these questions now, let's add one more text, and then we'll circle back to those questions, if that's okay. Because here it's exacerbated with what's come next. Rabbi Yochanan says, in the case of a teacher who is exiled, his school is exiled with him. So what does this mean? If a teacher of Torah inadvertently kills somebody and has to go to a city of refuge, all of that person's students have to go with him. It's a couple different ways to read that. One could be, right, the same way before a student goes, the student can't be left without Torah, so they need their teacher to go with them. Here, the teacher somehow, right, if the teacher goes, they can't be left without their teaching, so their students have to go with, or maybe their students who would be left without a teacher can't be left without a teacher, and so they have to go too. It's not totally clear if Rabbi Yochanan did this so that the teacher would be able to continue teaching, or the teacher's students would be able to continue learning, or both. But if you're asking, about, was the previous one disruptive? This one's even more disruptive, because now it's not just one teacher to go with his student. It's if the teacher has to go, all of the teacher's students have to go too. And that actually, as I read this, made me wonder, because these two are juxtaposed one after the other, if they're also connected. A student inadvertently kills someone, they go to the city of refuge, so their teacher has to go too into exile. And maybe since the teacher's going into exile to support the student who's an unintentional killer, all the other students have to go also, because their teacher's being exiled to teach the exiled student, but then they'd be bereft of their teacher, they have to go as well. So to your questions now, which, I think are sharper, because this is even more disruptive. I think there's some great, so the question I think here is this a theoretical conversation? Is this really what happened? Right? Are we legislating when students of Torah are in this situation, like not only is their life disruptive, others have to go to support them. It's hard to know, right? We know the cities of refuge were mandated biblically. And we know because of that, the rabbis talk about that in the Gemara. We don't have any evidence that actually this was a functioning system that people actually used and people went, right? We only know about it from the Torah and the rabbinic texts about it. We some of the place names that are labeled, we have some sense of where those ancient cities were, and it's possible they were cities of refuge. And the notion is not foreign to right, the ancient Near Eastern culture of setting up such potential things. But your questions are good about the whole topic, right? So the Torah says, and the rabbis embrace, if to save the life of the inadvertent murder from a potential revenge killer, we're going to disrupt that person's life for as long as the current high priest is alive, so that they're not killed. And it's worth it to us to do that. Well, one, we have to because the Torah says, but it seems worth it to prevent revenge killings. We're going to protect the targets of those and move them away. These texts suggest we're going to move the Torah teaching infrastructure along with them, right? It doesn't say, right, and some of those other things, Rachel, that you mentioned that might be in the chat about, do their families go too? Can people visit them? Right, it doesn't say they could bring their barber or their scribe or their business associates. It seems from the text in the Talmud that and from the right, that these cities weren't just for exiled people, that they were actually that there were things in the city, there were functioning places. People lived there, and they had a designation as cities of refuge. From these two texts, it appears that maybe they didn't have batei midrash, that they weren't places where regular houses of learning were. Maybe you could argue if there was a house of learning already in a city of refuge for the regular residents, then these people wouldn't have to bring their teacher into exile with them, because they could just, they could transfer into the Beit Midrash to the teacher who was there. What I take away from this is I think the point that the rabbis are trying to make here in the Talmud, which is when you're in this situation and your life is disrupted, your life of Torah shouldn't be disrupted. And we're willing to make more disruptions in the world to allow the person who's going to a city of refuge to continue studying Torah. It's one of the manifestations of, right, what the rabbis say, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, right? The primary thing that we're supposed to be doing is studying Torah, and we have to make sure that's available to someone, even where they're in the state where they're being exiled to the city of refuge. Yes, it's disruptive. Yes, there are lots of reasons we could object to this, but it seems, at least in this half a page, the rabbis are saying Torah is one of the highest values, and we're going to make sure the person who's exiled to city of refuge gets it. Now, practically, did this really happen? Did the teachers really go? We don't know. In these pages that follow, there are stories that are coming. We're going to look at some, but not about a teacher going to a city of refuge, but something related or maybe tangential. You'll decide. So, did this really happen? Hard to say from just the Gemara, right? It's hard to do historical sociology from the Talmud. You can maybe glean a little bit, but to some of those questions, I don't have full answers because we just don't have the evidence for that. But it seems from a value statement, the rabbis are saying it's worth disrupting our life a little bit to make this happen.
And we've seen many other stories where the rabbis feel there's some tension between a life of Torah and a life of family, right? That could arguably be a Talmudic theme.
Sure, right. Do you have a family? Do you study or have a family? Right? Do you study or have a job? Do you study or do mitzvahs? There are all those different themes we've seen in different places. So that is true theme. And here, that same theme comes up. How do we put this value of Torah and juxtapose it to this other piece as well? All right, we can come back to these questions in a moment. Let me just add a few more things before, because I see the time is running. But you got some of my conclusion about the Torah value here in the middle because of your question. That's fine. So the Gemara does a couple of interesting things with these teachings, although their questions are different from your questions that we just raised in the chat. So the first thing is there's an objection. Is this so? Ini, says the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan said a teacher of Torah is exiled. His whole school have to go too. But the Gemara says this can't be true because here's a contradictory teaching of Rabbi Yochanan. Doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say, from where is it derived that matters of Torah provide refuge? As it is stated, right, here's the answer to that question, right, that Rabbi Yochanan teaches. From Deuteronomy chapter 4, it says there, the context, Moses, it talks about Moses teaching, one of the places where they teach, Moses talks about some laws to the Israelites, including cities of refuge, and it mentions 3 cities, Beitzar, Ramot, and Golan, which are east of the Jordan River, which are half the cities of refuge. But it talks about Moses setting up these cities, and right after the very next verse says, and this is the Torah. This is a contradictory teaching to the fact that here's how I'll show you in a second. If you look at the verses, all of them, right, it says, then Moses set aside 3 cities on the east side of the Jordan, to which someone goes. It lists the names. And then the next verse says, this is the Torah that Moses set before the Israelites. Often this phrase, when it comes like this, right, Vezot Torah, Asher Sam Moshe Lifnei Bnei Israel, right, that you might recognize that as a part of what we say when we lift a Torah in synagogue. Sometimes this is a summary thing at the end of a section, at the end of an oration, at the end of a list of laws. This is the Torah of this topic, or this is the Torah that Moses taught the Israelites. Sort of a closing piece, or sometimes an opening one. But here's how Rabbi Yochanan is reading it. Right, what are the cities of refuge? Beitzar in the wilderness and the tableland, belonging to the Reubenites. Ramot and Gilad, belonging to the Gadites, and Golan in the Bashan, belonging to the Manassites. And this, the Torah that Moses set before the Israelites. And how are they reading this? The Torah is sort of a 4th city of refuge on this list. Let me go back to the piece. It says, matters of Torah, right? Doesn't Rabbi Yochanan himself teach, from where does it derive the matters of Torah provide refuge? Meaning, if a teacher of Torah inadvertently killed someone, that teacher of Torah should not need to go to the city of refuge and bring his school there too. Why? Because studying a Torah protects the teacher from revenge killing, like the revenge cities. And if that's true, if Rabbi Yochanan says teaching Torah protects you from revenge killings, why would it be that Rabbi Yochanan says that the teacher has to go and disrupts the life of his whole academy because they have to go too? A conflict between 2 statements of Rabbi Yehuda, and the Gemara says in one of its solutions to things like this, well, this is not really difficult here. These 2 statements are talking about different things. The first statement of Rabbi Yochanan that says, the second statement that says Torah is protection happens at the time that you're studying Torah. When you're studying Torah, Torah is protection. And the other statement says the teacher and his academy has to go to the city of refuge. That's for when he's not studying Torah. Meaning, true, studying Torah can be protection to you according to Rabbi Yochanan, but it doesn't protect your whole life. It only protects you in the moments when you're studying Torah, not in the moments when you're not. So the 2 statements don't contradict yourself, meaning the teacher of Torah who becomes an inadvertent murderer might get some extra protection while they're studying and teaching Torah, but they still need the protection of the city of refuge. So both statements of Rabbi Yochanan can be true at the same time. And if you don't like that solution, right, that both statements are true, the Gemara says, well, if you wish, you could explain it this way. What does Rabbi Yochanan mean that Torah provides refuge? Not from a revenge killing, but it provides protection from the angel of death. We don't have minutes to sort of dig into all the different things that the angel of death can mean here, but seems to be, as opposed to a revenge killing by another human, this is sort of death by the angel of death, somehow by the hands of heaven. When it's your time to go, the rabbis say the angel of death comes and takes you. But here's the story that shows if you're studying Torah, you get protection from this kind of death, which we've seen, by the way, at least once and maybe twice before on some different pages. So if it rings familiar, it's because you've been, well, you might know it from folklore, but if you're reading Daf Yomi, it might ring familiar. Right, there's an incident where Rav Chisda was sitting and studying in the study hall of Rav, and the agent of the angel of death was able to approach him because his mouth was not silent from his study. Right, that's maybe what Rabbi Yochanan meant. Right, Rav Chisda studying in the Beit Midrash, and it's his time to die, but the agent of the angel of death is unable to enter the room or get close or to take his life because he's studying Torah, and he kept studying and kept studying and kept studying, and he had that protection. So the agent of the angel of death wanted to fulfill his assignment to bring Rav Chisda to the next world, but couldn't get close. So what did he do? The agent of the angel of death ascends and sits on the cedar tree, on the cedar tree of the study hall of Rav. So there must have been a cedar tree in the courtyard or nearby or something, or maybe it was an outdoor study hall. And what happens? The agent's sitting on a branch of the tree. The cedar tree broke as a result. Maybe the branch fell, right? And there's like a noise, and the noise happens, and Rav Chisda was silent. He hears the noise of the broken branch. He looks up a minute and stops studying Torah because he's distracted by the noise. And that's where the agent of the angel of death is able to step in and bring Rav Chisda's life to an end. Here, a story about Torah protecting you, but also the cunningness of death personified, well, angelicified, is that a word? Death personified as the angel of death or an agent. But says, reinforces this notion that Torah can be a protection to you, but also not absolute, that you might need other protections as well when you're distracted and you stop your study, which might reinforce the two statements of Rabbi Yochanan. Even though this was brought as an alternative understanding of why there are two statements, it does reinforce the point from above. If studying Torah protects you from revenge killing, it might be only when you're studying Torah, and if you're distracted, you still might fall victim to it. So you would need to go to the city of refuge anyways. Taken all together, I think this run of text here is a moment where, as I said earlier, the rabbis turn to what their life purpose was, the study of Torah, and that as a religious obligation, and start thinking about, how might exile to city of refuge disrupt Torah study, and what might we have to do, maybe practically, maybe theoretically, to keep Torah study going. But it's another moment in the Talmud where the rabbis remind us, if it were up to them, we'd all be studying Torah a lot of the time, or as much as we could. And in that sense, it's not a bad text for us to look at, that we could review people who have committed some time in their weekly or daily routines for the study of Talmud, perhaps envisioning, the rabbinic ideal. My own belief system doesn't bring me to believe that study of Torah gives us protection from, the bad things that are out there that happen in the world. But I do think there's a great benefit to a commitment to a life of Torah and studying Torah, broadly defined. And Daf Yomi certainly falls into a part of that. And it's a great pleasure of mine to share the Daf Yomi experience with all of you. It's definitely something that uplifts me and gives me refuge from, the darker news that we're in as well. Anyways,
I think we will leave it there. Thank you for this half hour of Torah study, and for all of you for being part of this community and being part of my Torah study community as well. And we shall journey on. We'll see you in your inbox tomorrow morning, and we will be back in this space next week as we continue our journey through Makot. Wishing everybody a Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you soon.
Take care, everybody. Thanks.